Ajay, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for spending a little time with us. By the way, Ajay Madwesh is the Vice President of Utilities Industry Business Unit for Spacetime Insight, and he's agreed to share some of his insights around the utilities and what's going on. Um, Ajay, with your company being based in Silicon Valley, and there's a lot of buzz and a lot of talk around big data and the Internet of Things and what's going on, especially when you start looking at connected devices and what's going on in utilities. In some ways, it's old news, but in many ways, the activities going on today is brand new. So, what can you share with us about what you see with utilities and customers with the Internet of Things coming forward?
Right. So, there's two or three major trends in process right now. The first is that the Internet of Things is becoming cheaper to implement. There is an Internet of Things today, but it is making it easier and easier to get the Internet of Things installed and run. The communication cost has come down, the cost of sensors have come down, makes it very easy to bring data from remote locations. Now, that leads to the big data problem, which is now we have lots of data. What do you do with lots of data? Do you now analyze every single bit of data that's coming in, or do you want to analyze only certain parts of it? So those challenges are the new challenges that are facing the utility industry. The second trend is that the utility itself is changing. There is new things that are happening in the distribution networks that previously did not exist, like distributed energy resources, storage, wind generation, solar generation. How do you manage all of this in the context of a utility network? So that's the challenge that we've taken on. That's the challenge that we are focused on, and we think we have solutions for that market right now.
Okay. What can you share some examples or things that Spacetime is doing to help utilities manage their network better, especially in light of the benefits that we can get from the Internet of Things and things that the way the utility model is changing moving forward?
Exactly. The new utility has to embrace the variety of energy resources that are coming available. They could be at the consumer level, they could be at the low voltage level, or they could be at the substation level. How do you harness that capability that exists in the network itself? That's a new kind of a challenge, because the old challenge was the electrons always vibrated down the wire to the load. Now, what if the load, as we used to call them, themselves can generate, which is
Right.
I as a human being can put a solar rooftop on my home. So which means that your networks just became more complex. How do you manage such a network that has bidirectional flows in them? Do you manage at the distribution level? And then what does it mean for the load forecast at the transmission level? So there is a impact downstream and upstream in these new networks, and that's where the IoT comes into play significantly. You now need some critical data that doesn't exist today that IoT can bring to you, and then you run analytics and be able to visualize what's going on in your network significantly. So that's really the core focus of what we do.
Right. Yeah, managing the network used to be complex. It's got super complex now.
Exactly.
So having the right tools to do that's pretty critical. Again, still thinking in terms of the Internet of Things, IO things. New technologies help improve outage as much. A lot of focus today in utilities with regards to understanding and managing better to outages. Is there some new perspectives to how we manage to outages and what the utility model is starting to evolve to, especially around customers?
Exactly. So again, the complication, the life was great when the outages start. The OMS told you, here's an outage and here's the location of the outage, which is still important. We still need to do that. But customers are facing bigger problems, through regulations, through consumers themselves being active in the market, where they want to know ahead of time that an outage is happening. How do you know that there's incipient outages setting in? Because sometimes if an outage is happening at a commercial building and it happened in the middle of the night, you still won't get a report that an outage happened till next day morning, because someone is going to come in and try to switch on the lights. Nothing happens, then say, oh, okay, there's an outage here.
Right.
So you really were not conscious that there was an outage till much later. So how do you deal with that? So Internet of Things is one of those opportunities we have. It could be something as simple as, the sensors like AMI meters giving us data that we can now triangulate and say, there must have been an outage in this area. nested outages have always been a problem. Internet of Things can help reduce the problems of nested outages. So then you can resolve the entire outage at one go. So that's how Internet of Things comes into play for improving even the traditional things like reduce time to restoration of an outage.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that utilities had dispatchers sitting in there with printed out sheets of paper of trouble figuring out what outages were. Well, we've come a long way, but obviously there's a lot more we can do in this area. Let me shift you a little bit to asset performance and asset management. And I want to share with me a little bit what Spacetime is doing to help utilities with that.
Again, we live in an industry that is heavily asset intensive, and it is the way it is. And if you take the Western world, Europe and the United States, a large bulk of these assets came in somewhere in the 60s to the mid 70s. So which means that they are now at their end of their design life. However, doesn't mean they're all going to fail.
Right.
Some of them may have already failed, you may have replaced them. So the challenge is no longer just doing asset management. The challenge is of an asset analytics, meaning that what can you glean about an asset? Also, as the workforce retires, the people who actually built these things, they retired, and they knew innately how things work. When they go away, who do you replace that with? And the newer generation is not that keen for a variety of reasons in that they are the Xbox world.
Right.
So what we are doing is that we are looking at distribution and transmission assets in a variety of ways to help with not only understanding the asset health and risk, but also provide a strategy for do I maintain this asset? Do I replace it? Do I end of life it? And where's the money going to come from? I have only $10 to spend on this. How do I spend the $10 wisely on those assets? So for distribution where the strategy is to run to failure, some of these variables are different. In the transmission where everything is critical, one failure leads to large-scale outages, the strategies are different. Redundancies have to be taken into consideration. Transmission is heavily redundant. Distribution may not be as redundant. So those strategies change. So our asset intelligence product takes into consideration these variety of changes, variety of variables, to bring that knowledge above what an asset management system does to give you more insight on how to solve these problems.
Right. Well, listen, here I know you know this, but years ago, managing utility used to seem complex, but today it's super complex, and
Yes.
knowing and understanding data is critical for us going forward.
Exactly right, and that's our primary mission in whatever we do. Is there is a statistic out there that 88% of data is still trapped, meaning that there's no information being delivered from that 88% of the data. What can we do about pulling such unique information from that data that's still sitting there, unused, untapped, to make this complex world slightly less complex?
Oh, great. Well, listen, thank you very much.
Thank you very
It's been a
much.
pleasure spending some time with you.